Hi, I'm Bhavna Dalal. I'm an executive coach and a lifelong student of leadership. We are here with Lakshman today, also known as Lucky. Thank you so much for joining us, Lucky. So Lucky has been heading innovation for SAP for many years. He is also a visiting faculty for Hasso-Plattner Design Thinking Institute in Potsdam, Germany, and an adjunct professor at Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore. So thank you again.
Thanks, Bhavna, for inviting me for this session. Thank you.
Great. So let's talk about innovation, Lucky. What is innovation in your opinion?
Bhavna, innovation is a very broad subject and also a very important subject as we've been discussing for a while. And particularly when it comes to large enterprises, now it has become a very relevant topic, and given the new trend that is the startup world coming to a large force now, that's giving a kind of a competition as a threat to large enterprises.
Sure.
Therefore, the innovation topic has revived to a very large extent now.
Right.
So thanks to startups, while they are innovating as much as possible, they are at the same time giving a big run to the large enterprises.
True.
So that they could stay ahead and run much faster than the rest of the people. So in that context, from the business context, the innovations topic has become very, very relevant now.
Right.
And particularly since I'm coming from a large enterprise, large enterprises are making heavy investments in practicing innovation to the best that is possible. Yeah.
Okay. So how do large enterprises practice innovation?
There are different approaches large companies do. I can talk about a few companies. Some of them are global companies, as well as global meaning that companies abroad being present in India, as well as Indian companies who are global outside India.
True.
So on, because they have different multiple approaches to practice innovation, so that they come with their new set of products and services. And do it very, very quickly to reach to the markets. At the same time, it is being consumed by their users. When I say users here, meaning it could be customers for some companies, or it could be consumers for some companies, or it could be users in a different context for those companies here. So therefore, given the intensity at this point of time, there are different approaches. One such approach, which is my favorite topic, is about design thinking and business model innovation and lean startup approaches. This could be this could be applied by itself and in an isolated manner, or it could be used in combination. And
so these are three different approaches, and they could be applied together or they could be applied independently.
Correct. Yeah. And again, it's again the context, in the sense that design thinking more in terms of problem solving and creativity, and then problem solving helps you to innovate better than in your current scenario.
Okay.
And business model innovation helps you to bring in the viability of the business aspect. To bring you address the desirability aspect when you look at the design thinking, which means that whether whatever innovation that you come out with, it could be a product or a service, or it could be an experience, whether that's going to be consumed by a user or by a customer or by a consumer. Okay, that's what it addresses here, and it can also address the viability and feasibility. However, the new school, which is the BMI, the business model innovation, which is again coming from a startup. It's a Dutch startup, crowdfunded by 500 people, and it's run by a person called Alex Walder, and he has patented this business model.
The strategizer.com.
Exactly.
Yes.
So strategizer.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that.
So yeah. So this that approach is now being used by many organizations and many people, even today in the startup world.
Right.
Is that helps you to come out with the business feasibility aspect here. The third one is the technology viability and so on. And what happens here is that you can also do BMI. BMI also touches some bit of design thinking into it. So it is a kind of a combination that you do. If you're doing a pure play design thinking, and then to bring some aspects of BMI, and then afterwards how you do it, how do you implement it, is through the lean startup approach. Because lean startup approach helps you to become very agile, very fast, and then take it to the market very quickly, and then test it out whether your users can are delighted or not. And in the sense that you get the feedback so very quickly, in order to make the changes very rapidly.
Okay.
It is like imagine that you are coming with a great idea, but then how do you make that idea really tangible, right? So you will come with some kind of prototypes,
Okay.
right? And these prototypes are not too expensive. It may start with very low expensive, very rudimentary, very rugged ones, or things like which are very cheap, which you can throw it away because it doesn't. It is expected to be like that because you do it very quickly, and then take it to the users and test it out, and you get some great feedback out of them.
Right.
If you do a beautiful prototype or a beautiful product, people start loving it. So you don't get some great feedback from the users or the customers here. So therefore, these approaches, when I talk about design thinking and BMI or the lean startup approaches, makes you start with some very simple prototypes. I mean, when I say prototypes here, is one of the phases in the innovation process here, of the design thinking here, and jumping to one of those process steps here. Or you may start with the prototype itself. Imagine that you are a startup or a large company. You are already into some advanced stage of some product development. You are already put in some money. You are almost close to not actually a real product, but then a little before that. But then you don't know whether it will really hit the market in a big manner. So you could also apply these approaches there.
So is innovation, from what I'm hearing you say, and of course design thinking and BMI are heavily dependent on the customer. Would you say that the future of innovation, the way it's unfolding for bigger and smaller companies, is very tightly linked to the customer?
It is because the design thinking is all about human centricity. Now you ask a very important and relevant question. It's about human centricity, and it's only about it. It's about the people. Otherwise, we call them as a user. If it cannot delight the user, then innovation has no relevance. There is one famous author, I forgot his name. He talks about innovation must be something that should be that should solve a problem for the user. At the same time, it should be relatable to him, and it should be usable to him on his everyday experience. If that it doesn't happen, it is no longer innovation. It must be like an example is like this camera, right? So the camera crew here, they use it every day, and they look for some new advancement into that technology, the optic technology here, and the technology has to innovate enough so that their jobs becomes much easier, so that they can use it every day. That's a profession.
Actually, right. And the reason why a lot of these companies like Apple or Uber are talked about in line with innovation is because it has impacted our day-to-day lives to such a large extent.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, good examples related to that is Airbnb. You must be aware of them. Maybe you have used them in some of your trips, your vacation or your business trips, and they did exactly this because initially, they had this is an interesting problem to talk about, Airbnb problem here. The founders here are actually designers.
They are, right.
And
I've seen their
both of
interviews
them,
as well, yes.
Yeah, they are designers. They actually wanted to have something, I don't get the name of the product here. In US it's very common. It's an inflatable balloon type of...
Yes, the bed.
Yeah, bed.
The inflatable, I forget it.
They're looking for it so that, they were traveling, and one evening they wanted to stay somewhere, and then they were looking for it, and then they realized that it was a bit of a challenge. They got it, but then they went through that experience. But they started realizing if they are going through this kind of a challenging experience, how about many people whoever wanted to, they are very, in the sense they're kind of a startup here, but then the people who are in that kind of that segment, who are looking for something very basic, at the same time they want it very functional, and then it should not be too very expensive,
right?
But it should serve the purpose,
right?
Whenever they want that kind of a travel requirement. So that was a problem that they wanted to solve, right? And in the process, what happened is they thought they solved a problem, so they came out with that kind of an approach, and then slowly they started thinking about how do you make, how do you want to give that kind of a staying experience in a homely kind of a context.
Environment.
Because when you go to a hotel, then it becomes a very formal, very again it looks also expensive and too much of what do you call that that kind of what do you call the aura and so on, so
That
aesthetics and so
environment
on.
is not.
It's not required because many people look at very very functional homely kind of a thing, and they started doing it, and they enrolled some of the some of the some of the people who want to provide that NMC, and then they realized that it was not working.
Right.
Right?
So, another thought is coming to me. It may not be related, but so if I'm thinking if
Can I just speak between the cameras?
yeah, okay, I'm not doing it. Okay. Okay, I'll start. So one more thought that I'm thinking of is that if an organization has a value of innovation, then should it also not have a value of customer centricity?
It is. That's why the innovation.
They do have to go hand in hand, right?
No, it is embedded.
It is
Human
embedded,
centricity is embedded in innovation. So that's why this when you ask one of the first few questions about the customer centricity, the approach here is with whether it's a design thinking or BMI or lean startup is all about get the human into the center. And you keep the human centricity into the context, then innovation becomes more relevant to them.
Right.
What happens is when you're coming with this kind of prototypes, like again the Airbnb, if it's not satisfying that users, right? I was talking about that example. Initially, it was not working.
Right.
Then they themselves went and experienced it.
Correct.
And then they came with a kind of a checklist and saying that put these things in your group, in your home.
Right.
And let's get some more feedback from the users here. That's how they started improving
That's
one
how-
after the other. They did several iterations.
Right.
Like that, there are several such great examples
Examples.
you can think about.
I'm just trying to think that most of the examples that we've seen of where something disruptive has happened, not many have actually followed a structured approach, at least in the beginning.
Yeah.
Right? So other than design thinking and BMI and lean methodology, is it possible to just innovate in an unstructured
is.
manner?
Yeah, it is. I mean, that's what I think many people do. In the sense that either it is coming from a desire, the innovation, or it is coming from the problem-solving context here. These are the two ways that I could think of.
That's a really great point.
Yeah.
Either you think innovation comes from the desire,
Yeah.
or it comes from solving the problem.
Exactly. Should be an aspiration, like I said, or I was talking sometime back about something. You want to have some beautiful jewelry, right? Or you want to have some wonderful watch, right? And these are the designers available. No, there are like Philip Starkey, right? He comes with those one-off kind of a thing, which is few editions only,
Absolutely,
right?
yes.
And very expensive, and this is all aspirational value, right? Or whatever, like if you look at some of the garments and things like that, which are again aspirational values. So these are kind of one type of innovation. Or it could be your cars, right? Some of
Right.
those cars are Rolls Royce and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
They do only that many minimal number of products every year. They don't do mass production and so on. But at the same time, if you want to solve a problem, there are some good examples. Like BMW sometime back in US, they introduced this convertible, and they had an issue of they thought it is going to, right? That particular product, that particular car is going to take off in a very big manner. The convertible.
Okay.
So they actually created a new problem.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, right. So particularly the ladies who are driving it, they sit in, and then because of the airflow into the car, the air gets trapped into the car in the front, and then that throws up the hair of particularly the women who are driving it. So it gets disheveled, and that's one. And second is it creates a bad odor inside the air gets trapped.
Okay.
So, but then they started solving it. So one of the interesting research done by using design thinking project by Professor Larry Leifer in Stanford School, and they came with they did multiple experiments on this.
Mm.
Design thinking is about experimentation. Lean startup is about experimentation. So
Right.
do multiple experiments and do some frugal experiments so that it's not expensive, and then solve the problem.
Mm.
Once you solve the problem, then you can make it better and better. Then you bring in all. In this case, in the BMW experience, that's what they did.
Right.
They did several experiments. It's a beautiful
Okay.
journey.
I'll look it up for sure.
But still,
yeah.
it's a failed experiment, and but it's a great learning for the student as well as for the company itself.
Right. So for all those maybe young startup founders or even leaders in very big organizations who want to get started with making their organizations more innovative, what do you suggest should be like a few steps that they should take?
I think at least in Bangalore, I could say that Bangalore or Berlin for that matter, and like in some of the other cities in India also, in Hyderabad for that matter, slowly these approaches are catching up. Okay, now it is now coming. Many of the funding houses for the startups, they are also bringing the design element. Into their into their scrutiny, and therefore on the board they are asking these questions to the startups. Have you done this? Have you done that?
Okay.
So therefore the startups are now getting more and more tuned towards applying these approaches, not in a full scale format, but then what happens here is that some of these founders, they themselves are tuned to what you call as empathy. Okay. If you don't empathize with the users, you'll never be able to get some great insights.
Right.
And through insights, you get some great problems to be solved.
Correct.
And therefore, you get the relevant innovation coming out. So what happens here is that some of the founders are already, this kind of characteristics are already embedded into the system there. So if they don't talk about it, they just practice it. But then the others, they have this kind of intervention coming in from different mentors and so on.
Got it.
It's happening now. Many of the large companies, at least in Bangalore, they have their own what you call as a startup studios and so on and so forth.
Right.
They provide this mentorship for the startup people here.
Okay.
Apart from that, in Bangalore, there is so much of it's a very very active and thriving, throbbing culture.
Okay. Of design
startups
thinking.
here, and within that, a lot of design.
Okay.
NASCOM is doing quite a lot of work. TIE is doing quite a lot of work when it comes to design intervention for the startups and so on. Similarly, our large companies, they have to catch up to the competition, because now the whole world is changing because of so much of disruption happening around the world here.
Right.
So therefore, they have to. If not design thinking, it could be any other approaches. There are many other approaches as well.
So what are some of the other approaches?
There are other approaches like TRIZ is one, which is a Russian-based approach is there, and there is. There are a few more, and I'm not able to get the right names. The TRIZ is one, and what else? There's a traditional waterfall model is being there,
Right.
and there are a few more. I'm not able to get the names.
That's okay. Yeah. So it's good to know that there are more.
Yeah.
So I know I've gotten familiar with design thinking through YouTube videos, right? So if you were to recommend a way to get started for someone on learning how to become a design thinker, is there a particular thing which is like a great go-to source?
There are quite a number of design thinking startups here in Bangalore itself.
Okay.
Who are consulting firms, design thinking consulting firms.
I see.
Yeah, there are a few of them here in Bangalore. They're trying really hard, and some of them doing really well.
Okay.
And there are many companies who invest, like our company, or for that matter, I can talk about Intuit, who has been a long practitioner of design thinking. SAP has been a long practitioner of design thinking, and Cisco for that matter, and there are many others, Honeywell for that matter, and so on. So most of them are around this geography of Bangalore here, and they do that. But one is that the design thinking, many people think that it can be learned in 1 hour or in 1 day and so on.
Right.
No, it is not, because it's more than it's not about learning. It's more about practicing, and it's a mindset. Because you have to believe in it that it is, it will work, and you need to be passionate about doing it. And many people try it for a few days, and then they expect some magic to happen. No, it will not happen like that. And there are some of the Companies or for the matter design consulting firms, um, they do it for a few days. I mean, I don't think it's the right approach to do it, because if you look at the Stanford D School or the Hossa Prater Institute and some of the Ivy League schools which provide the design thinking curricula, they do it for a year. Okay. So which means that they do multiple projects for a year, which means that the students have to go through the experience, and every project experience is different, and every time you're learning something new, right? And then the mindset changes, right? And unless you get that into your system, then you won't be passionate about it. So therefore, there is no quick and fast way of practicing this. It takes a while. That's why the culture building takes a long time in many of the large organizations.
Okay, that's important point to note. So to summarize, if you really want to get going on bringing innovation in your organizations, whether small or large, a good structured approach is design thinking in combination with BMI, in combination with agile lean methodology, customer